speak for the nation on matters of justice and crime. This morning the Justice Secretary was on the radio suggesting that there were serious rapes and other categories of rapes. Would the Prime Minister now like to take this opportunity to distance himself from the Justice Secretary's comments?
Well, first of all, let me say that rape is one of the most serious crimes that there is, and it should be met with proper punishment. Anyone who's ever met a rape victim and talked to them about what that experience means to them and how it stays with them for the rest of their life could only want to have the most serious punishment possible. The real disgrace in our country is that only 6% of rapes that are reported to a police station end in a conviction. That is what we have to sort out. Now, I have not heard the Justice Secretary's interview, but the position of the government is very clear, that there is an offence called rape, and anyone who commits it should be prosecuted, convicted, and punished very severely.
Well, let me tell him what the Justice Secretary said this morning, because he was asked about the average time that a rapist gets, and the interviewer said a rapist gets 5 years. And then the Justice Secretary said in reply, that includes date rape, 17-year-olds having intercourse with 15-year-olds. He went on to say that there were categories of forcible rape and serious rape. Mr. Speaker, the Justice Secretary cannot speak for the women of this country when he makes comments like that.
As I say, I have not heard this interview, but the point is this. The point is this. It should be a matter for the court to decide the seriousness of the offence and the sentence that ought to be passed. I sat on the Sexual Offences Bill under the last government, where we looked at all of the issues about whether you should try and differentiate between different categories of rape. I seem to remember, actually, the honourable gentleman sitting on the front bench was leading the debate for the government. And we decided, as a House of Commons, not to make that distinction. What matters is, do we get more cases to court, do we get more cases convicted, and do we get more cases sent down for decent sentences? That is the concern we should have.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, when he leaves this chamber, should go and look at the comments of the Justice Secretary. And let me just say to him very clearly, the Justice Secretary should not be in his post at the end of today. Now, that's the first thing he should do. The second thing he should do is he has to do is to drop this policy. Because this policy that they are defending is the idea that if you plead guilty to rape, you get your sentence halved. That could mean the rapists spend as little as 15 months in prison. That is not an acceptable policy, and the Prime Minister should drop it.
I think what the Leader of the Opposition might be doing is jumping to conclusions on this issue. The point is this. There is already a plea bargaining system in Britain of 1/3, and we are consulting on whether to extend a plea bargaining system to make it even more powerful. We have not yet decided which offences it should apply to or how it should be brought in. This is a consultation. But the aim of plea bargaining, and it is worth remembering this, because plea bargaining is used in systems including very tough criminal justice systems like America. And the aim of plea bargaining is to make sure that more people get prosecuted, more people get convicted, and you actually save the victim from having to go through a court process and find out at the end that the culprit is going to commit a guilty plea at the last minute. That is what the government is looking at, and when we've listened to the consultation, we will announce our conclusions. But he needs to be patient until we do that.
Mr. Speaker, we're getting used to this as on health when there's a terrible policy. The Prime Minister just hides behind the consultation. Frankly, it's just not good enough. Let me tell him what people think about this policy. Let me tell him about that. Let me tell him what people think of this policy. The judges are saying the policy is wrong. End Violence Against Women is saying it's the wrong policy. And his own Victims Commissioner says the policy is bonkers. Now, I know he's in the middle of a consultation, but I'd like to hear his view on this policy, which he should drop.
The terrible fact that he refers to, the terrible fact, is that only 6% of rape cases are actually prosecuted and end in a conviction. That is after 13 years of the party opposite running the criminal justice system. So that's the improvement. movement we want to see. Let's make sure. He wants to know my view. My view is get out there, convict, prosecute and send these people down for a decent period of time. That is what we should be doing. Rape is such a serious offence, and so you should wait for the outcome of the consultation rather than just jumping on the bandwagon.
Mr. Speaker, it's about the way he runs his government. Because yesterday the Justice Secretary was saying this proposal is likely to survive the consultation. The Prisons Minister was defending the policy. People are rightly angry about this policy. They think it's the wrong policy. All I'm asking is something very simple. Why doesn't the Prime Minister give us his view?
Well, I've given you my view, and I'll give you my... I want to see more people prosecuted and convicted for rape, and we're going to take steps to make sure that happens. But I'll give you my view on something else. Yes, which is this. I think there is merit in having a plea bargaining system, which we have already, which should be discretionary to try and make sure we convict more. What we had under the last government was a mandatory release of all prisoners, irrespective of what they've done. Yes, he sat in the cabinet that let 80,000 criminals out of prison. That wasn't a discretionary policy, it was a mandatory policy, and it was a disgraceful policy.
Mr. Speaker, doesn't he realise what people are thinking of him on crime? Before the election, he made a whole series of promises, and now he is breaking them one by one. He's out of touch. He was out of touch on anonymity for rape victims, and now he's out of touch on sentencing for rape victims. He's cutting the number of police, cutting 12,000 police officers. Why doesn't he go back to the drawing board on crime and get rid of his Justice Secretary?
Well, in terms of broken promises, I remember the Leader of the Opposition saying at his party conference about Ken Clarke, I'm not going to say he's soft on crime. Well, that pledge didn't last very long. One of these days, the party opposite is going to realise opposition is more than just jumping on a bandwagon, picking up an issue. It's about putting forward a serious alternative and making some serious points.
Order! Sir Alan Hazelhurst. By way of contrast, Mr. Speaker, in harmony with the priority being given by the government to strengthening relations with the Commonwealth, does my